Premier Bros, back at you. Yeah, let's get straight into the first fixture from this weekend. The high-profile clash between Manchester City and Newcastle United. Two teams who are both searching for that Champions League spot. Came into the game level on points, and it was also billed as the matchup between the Premier League's hottest strikers, Isak versus Haaland. And neither of those strikers were able to leave a monumental impression on the game. It was Haaland's new teammate, Omar Marmoush, who stole the show. He scored a hat-trick within the first 30 odd minutes of the game, put the game out of reach before the end of the half, and Newcastle were put out of their misery. Had no answers, playing without the beast in midfield, Joe Linton. Their midfield looked less physical, less dynamic. City were able to control the game in the midfield. We also saw City employing a different strategy with Marmoush on the team, able now to play those longer balls. Marmoush running in behind, showcasing his offensive abilities, good finishing, pace, composure in front of goal. Although Marmoush stole the headlines, the player that really stood out for me was Nico Gonzalez, billed now as Rodri Part 2 or Rodrito, Mini Rodri, whatever you want to call him. Really impressive performance from him, and I'm pretty sure he's the true object of Guardiola's affections at the moment. Fitting into that midfield, being essentially the heartbeat of the team, filling that Rodri role almost perfectly. Able to disrupt the opponent's offensive rhythm in possession, really tidy, reliable, one-touch passes, almost metronomic, keeping everything ticking along like a Swiss timepiece. Was a brilliant performance, nothing flashy, nothing sensational, but vital. And that's what City have been missing, that link between the midfield, something that allows all the parts to work seamlessly together. And so City look, at first glance, with Nico in the lineup, they look like a fully functional Guardiola team once again. Of course, early days, we'll see how he continues. Right now, Guardiola must be feeling relieved that he's found an answer.
Yeah, I think Nico Gonzalez coming into the team is big news. And I think also just seeing City rebuild their team in the middle of the season, it's not something that we're common to seeing from top teams. We saw 4 new signings from the beginning of the season start this game. Savinho, Kusanov, Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez. So really, materially, this is a different team from what City had last season. And part of what we said about Rodri is that he's the fulcrum of the Manchester City squad. And when you lose your fulcrum, your stabilizing element within your team, the team is automatically going to be less effective. Now with Nico coming in to play that role as a pivot to control affairs, it makes the team much more formidable. We know in the Premier League, it's really a league of attrition. The pace and the power can wear on new players, especially players coming from leagues that are less intense. So let's see how he comes along, but good showing for Nico. And for Marmoush playing behind Haaland, moving into those open positions created by the runs of Haaland is a new approach that we see for Manchester City, and something that can be deadly. I think one of the questions will be, when Marmoush profits, can Haaland also profit at the same time, or is it one or the other? In this particular game, we saw Marmoush, as you said, get the hat-trick. It was within a 14-minute time span within the game, so just an avalanche of goals within the first half. We saw Haaland still part of proceedings, but not getting on the score sheet. So I think it will be interesting going forward to see how Manchester City plays and whether or not we can expect to see Haaland maybe scoring a little bit fewer goals, but the team as a whole becoming more formidable from an offensive perspective. For right now, I would say that we're on a little bit of a roller coaster ride with them. One week it's fantastic. The next week it's not so great. This week a good result. So what we'll want to see from them is points off their rivals consistently. And we know they still have a tough run of fixtures coming up, so we'll find out if they're able to do that. Another fixture from this past weekend that was notable was Chelsea away to Brighton. Chelsea losing 3-0 to Brighton on the road. Now we're at a point where we're seeing a run of fixtures where Chelsea haven't had any really good results. They've been looking poor, unable to create chances offensively. Palmer not looking like the player we all believe he is and can be. A lot of questions about Chelsea and their top 4 prospects. I think earlier in the season, we were singing their praises for how They were coming together and gelling as a squad, but now with a couple of injuries, Nicholas Jackson sidelined with a hamstring injury, the keeper getting dropped, Robert Sanchez after some dubious mistakes in the past, replaced by the backup Jorgensen, Reece James not starting, Gusto starting but getting injured. We see a lot of rotation, a lot of change, a lack of continuity within this Chelsea team. Also, Romeo Lavia still injured and not able to come back into the squad. We have to question not only their title credentials, but their top four credentials at this point.
Yeah, Chelsea at the moment, they look like they're in a disarray. Injuries have ravaged the squad. They've had some injuries to some very key players. If you look at every unit, the offensive, the midfield, and the defensive unit, they have a key injury in each of those units. Fofana, arguably their best defender, is out. In the midfield, we have this debate about Lavia, Caicedo, but there can be no question that Lavia is an instrumental part of that project.
Right.
And he's been out, the midfield of Caicedo and Enzo. It's not an effective combination. So they're struggling to really get control of the midfield. And then with the injury to Nico Jackson and their backup striker, Mark Guiu, as well. And Kuku has been called upon to fill the void. And he's just not the player that they need him to be at the moment. I'm not sure he ever will be. But they need Nico Jackson's ability. Yes, his finishing is a question mark at times. But what he does bring to the team is the link-up play. And his constant running, he's always working for the team, and he's able to link up with Palmer in particular. That link up with Palmer is very vital to Chelsea's offensive success. Without him in the team, they just don't have the same offensive thrust. And teams have started to figure out that Chelsea, they don't have a lot of threats outside of Cole Palmer. So stopping Chelsea has become a relatively simple task. Stop Cole Palmer. Fantastic player, of course. But he's one player, and he can't do it all. Nevertheless, he's created the most chances in the season. So he's still doing his job, but he can't carry the load by himself. The other players in Chelsea haven't stepped up. They don't have any other prolific goal-scoring threats. The wingers, Madueke, who's also injured at the moment, not a reliable goal-scorer. Pedro Neto, not a reliable goal scorer. Jadon Sancho, yes, capable of brilliant moments, not prolific. Even their striker, when he's fit and healthy, not prolific. He's improved a lot, Nico Jackson, is finishing, but still not the finished article. No pun intended. But they need to start finding answers from other players if they're going to push forth and get the Champions League spot. I still believe that they will do it because of the talent that they have. The other thing I want to say about Chelsea is Maresca, he seems to be quite rigid in his tactics, utilizing the wing-backs in a way that somehow doesn't necessarily play to their strengths. He inverts both wing-backs. In the last game, we saw Malo Gusto inverted when he likes to just run down the flank. That's his strength. Cucurella also inverting. These are guys that enjoy overloading on the flank. And with Maresca's system, it doesn't seem like they're really being utilized in the most effective way. So tactics are certainly at play here. But I think talent-wise, I think Chelsea have enough to still seize that Champions League berth.
Right. I agree with you in terms of the players, other than Cole Palmer, not really making the grade and not having an impact on the game. What Chelsea need are goal scorers outside of Cole Palmer, outside of Nico Jackson. The wingers in particular, for me, are a big disappointment. Sancho, Neto, Madueke, and you could include Nkunku as well. He's just not an effective player. And in order to really have a sustained challenge for the top four, you need to have multiple threats. And Chelsea just don't have it. I agree with the rigidity comment about Maresca. Doesn't appear that when different players aren't fit, he doesn't necessarily change the system to align with who is fit. And we don't see different formations. We see pretty much the same thing week after week, even if it's not working. So I am questioning their top four credentials. It remains to be seen whether or not Fofana and Lavia, when they come back, can they steady the ship? Not only that, but can they stay fit? These are two players who are perennially injured, and they come back into the team and they go out within a matter of weeks, generally speaking, both of them. If I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm a little bit concerned about the prospects for the remainder of the season. The good news is that they're still within a striking distance of the top four, not too far behind, but they do need to get things on track very soon.
So we saw Arsenal face Leicester. Arsenal coming into this game off the back of some relatively bad news. Their main striker, if you can call him that, Kai Havertz, suffering a season-ending injury, hamstring injury, leaving Arsenal with no recognizable strikers, or first-team strikers at least. Coming into this game, of course, the question was, how would Arteta handle that quandary? And he opted to start with a makeshift front line of Trossard playing as a false nine, Raheem Sterling on the left, and the young Nwaneri on the right. Sterling, I mean, I don't know. I mean, his career. He's certainly not the player he once was.
Raheem Sterling, he's no longer a Premier League caliber player.
He was a fantastic player. He's achieved the highest heights in football. But I think the time has come for him to, seek a new path outside of the pitch. Anyway, the only one of those three offensive players that looked a threat was Nwaneri, and boy, did he look a threat. He submitted another effervescent performance, showing his full array of offensive capabilities, taking guys inside, taking them outside, playing with the left, playing with the right, had some strikes on the post. However, Arsenal were not able to find the breakthrough until late in the second half when Mikel Merino was introduced. And much like Kai Havertz, in the mold of Kai Havertz, Mikel, a midfielder, tall, powerful in the air, fulfilled the role perfectly. Came in, 2 striker finishes, one brilliantly taken header, and then an instinctive finish taken with composure. So Arteta hasn't had to look too far to find an immediate answer. I don't know if this will be the long-term answer, but it seems like Marino has proposed an option, which is definitely one to be considered. And Arteta can feel a bit relieved because for much of the game, it looked like there was going to be no breakthrough. Trossard looked ineffective. Sterling, as I said, so the offensive capabilities for Arsenal are going to be an issue. And now we have to look at Arsenal and say they really need to rely on their defense. It's imperative that they do not concede goals because they're going to struggle to score. So the defense now really has to take center stage once again and be the star of the show. They cannot allow themselves to fall behind in games. They cannot allow themselves to concede cheap goals. They really need to keep it tight at the back. And without doing that, it's going to be a very difficult road ahead, hunting down Liverpool. So a good result, but the questions still remain.
I think Merino was somewhat of a revelation for Arteta, a savior, if you will, to come in and perform like that. I think less than 30 minutes was able to turn the game on its head. He has to be the answer going forward, literally going forward for Arsenal. There is no other option. We've seen that in this game with Raheem Sterling and Trossard. I agree the defense will be key, and the ability to control the game, I think, will be key as well. We see Ben White now back on the bench, so that gives you, as an Arsenal fan, a little bit more comfort around the prospects of the back line being as strong as it will need to be in order to have a title challenge. It's really difficult to see a way forward, though, for Arsenal to hunt down Liverpool with this weakened lineup that they have. What we'll hope to see is Bukayo Saka recover within the next few weeks. You have to hope that he can come back into the team, and that will give Arsenal perhaps a front three that will be more formidable. If you think about Nwaneri, Saka, and Merino, and having Trossard and Nwaneri share time with each other.
Nwaneri has excelled on that right flank. I mean, he's more of a midfielder, actually, but he's excelled on that right flank. Saka coming back into the team. Both can play on the left, both can play on the right. Saka made a name for himself, obviously, on the right. So you have 2 players who have made the right flank their own, right. Both in their, I would say in their prime. And Nwaneri has probably not reached his prime yet, but has certainly made a shout for securing that spot as well. How would you configure that? And I'm curious to the audience as well. What would be the preferred configuration?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good good question. For me, Saka owns that right flank. He's one of the leaders of the team, one of the best players in the league and probably the world. So I think he goes back onto the right flank. I definitely think Merino can play as a 9. To be honest, when I saw Merino play for the first time, I didn't know much about him. But when I saw him play for Spain and he scored that goal against Germany in the Euro to grab that victory in the knockout stages, I thought he was a striker. I definitely would be thinking of him, and I would throw Nwaneri on the left, let him try to beat out Trossard, give Trossard something to think about in terms of his spot, and maybe his performances will get even better from the competition. And it reminds me, I don't want to go off topic, but if you look at what's happening with Aston Villa, with Rashford, Malen coming into the team, all of a sudden we see Morgan Rogers, Leon Bailey, Jacob Ramsey having to raise their game in order to stay in the team. And I think competition is healthy. And for Arsenal, I don't know if it would be competition as much as just rotation, but that would be my lineup. Nwaneri on the left, Merino in the middle, Saka on the right, and hope for the best. What about you?
You can't really take that right flank away from Saka. I mean, as you said, he's one of the best players. He owns that position, as well as Nwaneri is done deputizing when Saka's back. He has to be given preference in that position. I do prefer Trossard coming off the bench. I've always said that. I think he really excels at coming into a game when defenders are a little bit tired. He's not a player that's blessed with pace. He's not a player that can really beat you off the dribble. So he's an asset when defenders are tired, and he can ghost into the box unnoticed, and he's great at finishing. So you just want to put him in a position where he can finish. Nwaneri has attributes that can really hurt teams at any stage of the game. So I prefer to unleash him for 60 minutes and then bring Trossard off the bench. I do agree that Merino seems like the answer. As I said, he has striker's instincts and composure when finishing. I think that's the best option at the moment. Well, just talking about Liverpool real quickly, we saw the Merseyside derby, Liverpool dropping points. Great game, actually, very exciting derby. Fantastic finish to the game. Tarkowski with an incredible volley to cement his name in the history books at Everton. Last Merseyside derby at Goodison Park. So Liverpool dropping 2 points there, barely scraping away from Wolves. 2-1 game there. Very nervy ending to that game for Liverpool. So are we seeing nerves creep in at Liverpool right now? They're starting to feel the heat. Arsenal are in the rearview mirror. Looks like they're staying there at the moment. Liverpool look a little bit nervy, maybe a little bit tired as well. I think they have some difficult fixtures coming up. They play Villa this week. Midweek game at Villa Park. And I believe that's where Arsenal kind of faltered last season. Right, so could be a tricky one for Liverpool. After that, they play Man City. So, tricky fixtures coming up for Liverpool. So, it's not done and dusted yet. We'll see how they fare in the next couple fixtures.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw, this is a Champions League comment, but after Real Madrid beat Manchester City in midweek last week, I saw a quote from Carlo Ancelotti saying, "Now is when the season begins." The top teams know that once you move to the latter stage of the second half of the season, where you have the knockout stages of the Champions League, and you also have whichever teams have been able to muster a run of games to get them in the top of the table within their respective domestic league, now is when the rubber hits the road. Now is when you see what champions are made of. And I do think that Liverpool are maybe feeling a bit of the pressure now. They were first in the Champions League, new format, finished on the top of the table. They were able to get a break, not have to play in the playoff stage. However, we see them having to play some midweek games because they've been able to advance in the cup competitions. So they're not really getting a break. They're not able to rotate the team because we saw when they rotated the squad, I'm not sure if that was the FA Cup or the Carabao Cup.
Yeah, they lost to Plymouth.
Yeah. They lost to Plymouth. And from the comments that I saw from Slot after that game, he kept on talking about, well, we weren't playing our starters, our non-starters this, our non-starters that. So he clearly has this delineation in his mind between who are his go-to players and who are not his go-to players. And I don't think he believes a lot in the players coming off the bench outside of Diogo Jota, Connor Bradley, and maybe one or two other players.
Curtis Jones as well.
Curtis Jones, right. But outside of that, there's no one else that he really truly does depend on. So we can see Liverpool starting to tire.
And you also see Arne Slot picking up a red card, getting a bit frustrated recently. So the pressure's starting to tell. He's usually a cool, calm, collected figure, but now getting riled up. So the pressure is starting to get to the team and to the manager. And let's see how they cope.
One thing we do know, they have Virgil van Dijk as the captain. He's been there before, Champions League winner. Same with Mo Salah. So if anyone can cope, it should be them. They should be able to be in that changing room, having the right conversations with their players. But, they can't get in the boots of their teammates. So we'll see if, as a team, they can perform. Premier Bros, thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. Hit us up in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week.